The night smelled of cold iron and distant pine, the kind of winter air that made every breath feel like a promise and a warning at the same time. New Year's Eve had never meant much to Clara before. It had always been noise without meaning, people counting seconds as if time listened. But tonight, wrapped in a borrowed coat and standing beneath a sky stripped bare of stars, the turning of the year felt heavier. Permanent, as if the world itself was holding its breath. She had married Daniel an hour earlier. No music, no crowd, no white dress, just a tired clerk with ink-stained fingers, a small wooden table, and 2 signatures written with hands that trembled for different reasons. Clara shook from fear of the unknown. Daniel shook from something deeper, something practiced, like a man who had learned long ago how to hide what mattered. People whispered when she said yes. They whispered because Daniel Hale was poor. That was the word everyone used. Poor rancher, quiet, lives alone, keeps to himself, works land no one else wanted. A man who never complained and never explained. Clara had heard the whispers too. She had felt them like pebbles in her shoes as she walked toward him, every step asking her if she was making a mistake. But she had already lived through worse than mistakes. She had lived through a life where love came with conditions, where warmth was always temporary, where being chosen never meant being safe. When Daniel had asked her, voice steady, eyes lowered, offering marriage not like a prize but like shelter, she had seen something different. Not wealth, not rescue, but space. After the clerk left and the door closed behind him, silence filled the room. Not awkward silence, the kind that listens. Daniel removed his hat slowly, almost ceremonially, as if he were stepping into a church. He didn't touch her, didn't even step closer. We don't have to go anywhere tonight, he said. If you'd rather rest. Clara studied him. The lines at the corners of his eyes were earned, not bitter. His coat was worn but clean. His boots had been repaired so many times they told their own story. Where will we go? She asked. My place, he replied. She waited for more. That's it. A faint smile touched his mouth. That's it. The drive took longer than she expected. The road narrowed, the lights disappeared, and the world became nothing but the crunch of tires over frozen earth. Clara watched the dark carefully, half expecting regret to rise out of it like a ghost. But instead, something else crept in. Curiosity. Daniel drove with both hands on the wheel, eyes forward, posture calm. He said little, but what he said mattered. Small things. The way the weather had shifted earlier than usual. How the creek froze differently every year. How land remembered kindness. You talk about the ranch like it's alive, she said quietly. He nodded. It is, if you let it be. The gate appeared suddenly, old wood reinforced with iron. Daniel stepped out to open it, his breath visible in the cold. When he climbed back in, he didn't look at her right away. There's something you should know, he said. Clara's heart tightened. She braced herself. Everyone eventually said those words. Yes, she replied. He paused, then shook his head. Later. Not tonight. The road curved through trees so dense they seemed to lean inward, as if guarding something. Clara expected a cabin, maybe a shack, something small, humble, matching the image the world had painted of him. What rose from the darkness instead made her stop breathing. Stone walls, tall windows glowing with warm light, a structure set back from the road, quiet and commanding, not flashy but unmistakably grand. Not a palace, but a home built with intention, patience, and resources she had never imagined Daniel possessed. The car slowed. Clara stared, disbelief washing over her in slow waves. Daniel, she whispered. He parked beneath an old oak, engine ticking softly as it cooled. For a long moment, neither of them moved. I didn't lie to you, he said at last. I live simply. I work hard. I don't spend what I don't need. But I didn't correct anyone either. She turned to him, searching his face for arrogance, for pride, for the kind of deception she had been trained to fear. She found none. Why? She asked. Because I needed to know, he said gently, that if someone stayed, it would be for me. Not this. The house stood before them like a held breath finally released. Clara felt something inside her shift. Not suspicion, not anger, but a strange, trembling respect. She had married a man the world had labeled small, and discovered he had chosen to be. The new year arrived without fireworks, without cheers. Just 2 people sitting in a car, staring at a truth neither had fully expected. And somewhere between the cold night and the warm light ahead, Clara realized this marriage was not the end of her uncertainty. It was the beginning of a question far more dangerous. What kind of man hides a mansion, and why? Daniel opened the door and stepped out first, the cold folding around him like an old habit. He walked to her side and waited, not offering a hand, not assuming anything. When Clara finally opened her door, her boots touched stone instead of dirt, and the sound echoed up the walls in a way that made her feel suddenly small. The house did not loom. It welcomed. Warm light spilled from tall windows, steady and calm. There were no guards, no grand gates beyond the one they had passed. Just silence, the kind that meant safety, not emptiness. Inside, the air smelled of wood polish and something faintly sweet, like dried apples or old books. A fire burned low in a wide hearth, already waiting. Clara stopped just inside the doorway, unsure where to stand, unsure where she belonged. Daniel removed his coat and hung it carefully. "You don't have to be careful here," he said, noticing the way her shoulders had drawn tight. "Nothing breaks easy." That wasn't about furniture. She knew it. They moved through the house slowly. Not a tour, not a reveal, just space unfolding naturally, rooms shaped by years of living, not by display. Shelves of worn books, tables scarred by use, windows positioned to catch morning light instead of attention. "This place," Clara began, then stopped. Words failed her. She had learned how to be grateful without asking questions, how to accept gifts with caution. But this was not a gift. This was a truth she hadn't been prepared to hold. "It's been in my family a long time," Daniel said. "Most of it's land, timber, water rights, people here, rancher, and stop listening after that. And you let them," she said softly. "Yes." They stood near the fire. The flames shifted, casting light and shadow across his face, revealing something she hadn't noticed before. Not secrecy, weariness, the kind that comes from carrying a decision alone for too long. "I didn't marry you to surprise you," he said. "I married you because when I spoke, you listened. And when you answered, you didn't ask what I could give you." Clara felt her throat tighten. "I thought you were offering me stability," she admitted. "A simple life." "I am," he replied. "This doesn't change that. Wealth only complicates things if you let it speak louder than your values." She turned away then, overwhelmed by a sudden fear she hadn't expected. Not of him, of herself, of how easily the world could change, and how unsure she was of who she became when it did. "I need to know," she said quietly. "If I had said no, if I'd walked away thinking you were poor, would you have let me go?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "Yes." The answer landed harder than any confession. That night, they slept in separate rooms. Not because of distance, but because respect demanded patience. Clara lay awake beneath a heavy quilt, listening to the house breathe around her. It did not feel like a trap. It felt like a test, one neither of them was rushing to pass. Days followed, gentle and deliberate. Clara learned the rhythms of the place, the way Daniel worked from dawn until the light shifted, the way he spoke to staff with quiet authority that never raised its voice. No one bowed, no one feared him, they trusted him, and that trust, she realized, had nothing to do with money. Yet whispers still found their way in. News traveled fast when it wanted to. The poor rancher was not poor. The marriage was not what it seemed. People began to look at her differently, measuring her worth against walls she had never asked for. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the fields, Clara confronted him. "I don't want to be your secret," she said. "And I don't want to be your proof." Daniel set down his papers and met her gaze. "Then don't be. Be my partner. Stand where you choose. I'll stand with you." Something in his voice cracked, not weakness, but hope held too carefully. Clara stepped closer, close enough now to feel the warmth he carried, earned and steady. "Then tell me everything," she said. "Not the mansion, not the land, the part you hide even from yourself." Daniel exhaled slowly, as if opening a door long locked. And in that moment, Clara understood. The true secret of the house was not its size or its silence. It was the man who had built walls around his heart higher than any stone, waiting for someone who would not climb them for what was inside, but simply ask to be let in. Say, final part continue, when you're ready.